Welcome to the Astro Psyche. This is your weekly astrology forecast for September 15th through the 20th. And this week is about a cosmic reset. The main event this week is a new moon partial solar eclipse in the sign of Virgo. And we also have Venus changing signs, we have Mercury changing signs, and some other things in the astrology that we'll talk about. And this particular week, there is definitely this energy of resetting, refreshing, refining, and continuing to deepen into this ongoing process that began in September last year, September of 2024, continuing to clear out and to remove any stuck or funky or expired energy to allow for new, fresh energy to come in mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, all of the different ways. We're going to talk about all of those things. My name is Shawna McGrath. I'm a depth psychotherapist and an astrologer, and it's such an honor to share the astrology of the week with you from a depth psychological perspective. So let's talk about this eclipse that's happening. So, new moon, solar eclipse, partial solar eclipse in Virgo on Sunday, September 21st. It's exact at 12:54 p.m. Pacific time. So depending on where you are in the world, might be Sunday the 21st, it might go into Monday the 22nd. And it's happening at the very last degree of Virgo, which is 29 degrees. So each zodiac sign goes from 0 degrees to 29 degrees. So this is relevant for a couple of different reasons. There is symbolically a sense of culmination and maturation and closing out when we're working with something at the later degrees, particularly the last degree. And we already had a new moon in the sign of Virgo um, early in the degrees of Virgo. So there's this double newness, there's this double planting of seeds. And every year, one of the zodiac signs gets a doubling up of illumination. And this year in 2025, it happens to be Virgo, and it happens to align with an eclipse. So this feels really important. Whenever we see repeating themes or patterns in the astrology, whether that is something happening, multiple things happening in a particular sign or modality, or we see a similar motif, we know that that particular motif is going to be emphasized, that it's very here, that there is something important about it. And in this case, we're talking about Virgo and the Virgo Pisces polarity. And Virgo in particular is about processes, discernment, it's about sorting and being able to hold the vision, the ideal, the big picture, where it is that we want to be, and how things can be, how things should be, the beautiful idealistic symmetry of a situation, being able to hold that vision while also being able to assess all of the particulars of how to get to that point or what needs to happen. Virgo as a way of being, and I want us to be thinking about being in the Virgo way of being. Because we're all getting to experience that this week and really over the whole entire month of September while we're in this eclipse season. The Virgo way of being is about being systematic, being ritualistic, and looking at the whole as well as the individual and the particulars, and really being able to zoom in and zoom out, and being able to honor how important it is to bring a sense of sacredness to the material world, which is really what ritual is about. Ritual is anything that is done uh, with intention, and where we take something that appears to be ordinary and we give it meaning, whether that is assigning meaning to it because we have a certain intention, or just bringing a certain amount of reverence to something. And this can be very simple too. This can be pouring your tea, coffee, or beverage, that green juice, whatever you have in the morning, apple juice, orange juice, water, whatever it is that you drink in the morning, um, that first liquid sustenance that you have, intending that you're taking in a blessing for the day, intending that you're taking in the energy that you need for the day, but taking a moment to intentionally reflect on there is something that you're bringing into yourself for the day. Even that is having this Virgoian way of being in the world. It's taking this thing that's very mundane and making it something more, making it something meaningful. Now, so I'm really emphasizing that because there is something new that's being created here around how it is that you move through the world, how you do your routines and your rituals, and how you take care of yourself. Virgo is also a symbol of how we take care of ourselves, how we take care of others, how we feel we are of service, and how we discern how to show up in different spaces and what is needed, what is expected of us, and what we have the capacity to give and what we have the capacity to receive. New moons are always a new beginning, a planting of new seeds. This, there's, whenever we have a new moon, there is something new that is being planted in your psyche. There's something new that is arising for you. And sometimes these are big structural changes, sometimes they're more subtle. It really depends on what's happening in your life. And at this particular time, it's this new beginning. And also, there is a sense of importance or gravity to it because this new moon is aligning with the eclipse. And eclipses are this reset, this refresh, this clearing out, and then bringing something new in. And often eclipses can have this feeling tone of things transitioning or changing rapidly or in a way that's unexpected. Eclipses can also show a time period where we wake up to how we actually feel about something, or there is maybe an external scenario that clarifies things for us. That can often happen with eclipses as well. Now, eclipses always involve the North Node and the South Node. North Node and South Node are always opposite one another. They're bound together, they're interconnected. And so this particular new moon solar eclipse is conjunct the South Node in Virgo, but it's also opposite the North Node in Pisces. And so we're still holding space for this this polarity, this duality. And the nature of the duality is the South Node in Virgo, the South Node being a symbol of releasing, clearing, letting go, things dissipating, things softening or dissolving. The South Node can also be a symbol of creativity, creative acts, spirituality, spiritual acts. The South Node, at its essence, is about the unseen realm, the unseen energy, the unseen realm. And so this can be creativity, spirituality, these things that are not fully formed yet until they move down and into the body, into the material world. And also, in the birth chart, the South Node tells us about the things that we tend to default into. And so there, with the South Node placement, there is a simultaneous inherent gift and skill. And also, at the same time, the South Node tells us about the things that we tend to default into that maybe end up because we feel so comfortable with this way of being that it tends to feel worn, or it tends to feel like it becomes dysfunctional because it gets such heavy use. And so if we're to look at this from a depth psychological perspective, in this moment when I'm talking about this, I'm thinking about defenses, psychological defenses, and psychic structures, and how um, we are generally, as humans, we're at our healthiest, where we feel the best, and we're able to um, have relationships that feel fulfilling. We're able to have a sense of purpose and confidence and all of the things that help us to feel well and vibrant when we have multiple ways of dealing with challenges or anxieties, when we have multiple psychological defenses that we can draw on. And so, defenses are things like projection, repression, using humor, displacement, things like this. So we all have defenses and ways of sort of coping and dealing with things. And the more ways that we have and the more flexible we can be with dealing with challenges, usually the better that we do in life and the better that we feel in life. And so the South Node tells us about a thing that we tend to do again and again because it works for us. And at some point, it becomes a deeply ingrained groove. And because the groove is so deep, it starts to get clogged or stuck and it starts to not work as well. I hope this is making sense as I'm describing it. Uh, yeah, if something is used over and over again, it gets more wear and tear and then it stops functioning as well. So this is the South Node, particularly in the birth chart. And when we're talking about the South Node in Virgo, possibly some of those qualities that we are realizing that maybe are no longer functional are things like intensely drilling into the details in a way that maybe becomes more critical, focusing on the negative and what's not working. Virgo South Node can also show where there is a fixation on the ideal or the way that something should be. And there's such a fixation on this is how it should be, and the wide variance between what it is now, that there is not an ability to actually do anything about the way that it is now. It's so, I see this sometimes when there's a strong Virgo placement, is sometimes the the lack of perfection can be devastating. And I don't even want to necessarily use the word perfection, but that's the word that I'm using. So the lack of being the lack of things being the way that they really could be or should be can be sort of paralyzing or devastating. And then that prevents one from moving forward in some way. And so these are some themes that may possibly come up again. It really depends on what else is happening in your birth chart and in your life and what your temperament is. And then also, so I do also want to say, though, the South Node in Virgo, one of the gifts that we can lean on, that we're refreshing this week, is the ability to work with systems, to be discerning, to parse things out, and to see the full um, the full layout of, okay, what needs to happen here in order to get somewhere. There is such an exquisite ability to sift through a large amount of detail and process when we're talking about Virgo. And so this is something that um, is really available to us this particular week, because this eclipse is also opposite the planet Saturn. This eclipse is conjunct the planet Mercury. Mercury will be out of sign in Libra, so it'll be in Libra, not quite in Virgo anymore, but it will be still there. So we have this mixture of the moon and the sun together with the south node, with Mercury, and that whole combination that is very much about connecting with our mind, bringing the conscious mind, the sun, Mercury, in alignment with the unconscious mind, the moon and the south node, and bringing these new realizations to light, going into the darkness, going into the unconscious, going into the unknown, questioning, being curious, and then having this aha moment and saying, oh my goodness, I have totally flipped. I've had a totally different perspective, and now I can see things more fresh and more clearly. And then all of that is opposite Saturn and Neptune, which is about working with both the seen and the conscious and the structure of reality, Saturn, as well as the unseen world and the imagination and feeling into what could be possible, which is Neptune. So there's a lot of different layers and energies that are happening here, and there is a potential for bringing the unknown into the light. Now, again, I think we're also keeping in mind that because of the Virgo South Node that we talked about, and also because Mercury is opposite Saturn and Neptune this week, there's also this potential for, if there's maybe a challenging situation that you're dealing with, there's a potential for falling into fear and fear and feelings of helplessness or hopelessness, or feeling like you don't have the ability to find your way through. And if that is something that you're prone to feeling or that you're feeling this week, I would encourage you to um, create a little bit of space for that feeling. We're not going to make that feeling go away, but we're going to say, okay, I'm feeling like it's very difficult right now, and it feels like there's not a pathway through, but you and I know consciously that there is a pathway through, and we just need to take it one step at a time, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time. And eventually that feeling will shift, change, maybe it'll dissipate, maybe it will change in its tone. And so we're just moving through this process one step at a time. Um, do I want to say more about this? So yeah, I'm curious, because we're already in eclipse season, we're already feeling a lot of these qualities. And so because this eclipse is happening over the weekend, um, Sunday or Monday, the 21st or the 22nd, you're probably already starting to feel some of these themes. And so I'm curious what's happening, what's coming up as I'm sharing this with you. The other thing too that I want you to be thinking about with this particular eclipse and the eclipses this month is that we are within the context of a wider cycle. And eclipses happen and sort of there's like multitude of cycles. Okay, I'm pausing for a second because I want to share things with you as concisely as possible. So we know that the North and South node change signs about every year and a half. And the eclipses tend to fall within the sign that the nodes are in. But it's not always neat and tidy because sometimes there is an eclipse that falls just outside either sign that the nodes are in. So um, we know that the North Node and South Node have been in Pisces and Virgo from January of 2025. They'll be there until July of 2026. And then the nodes will go into Aquarius and Leo. So we know that Pisces and Virgo eclipses are happening about from January 2025 to January 2026. But our very first Pisces Libra eclipse actually happened before the nodes changed signs. And that eclipse, I'm actually also going to, just because I like looking at dates and contemplating things, I find that helpful, and you may as well. I'm going to list out I'm going to list out all of the eclipses that happened within this time period of Virgo Pisces eclipses in the description of this video. So those will be there for you. So the first Pisces Virgo eclipse that happened within this cycle was on September 17th of 2024. And this also feels very relevant because that was at 25 degrees of Pisces. So very late in the sign. And I feel this hearkening back to the eclipse that's happening this week. So that eclipse in September of 2024, that was the beginning, the opening of the book of the story of Pisces and Virgo eclipses for you. The book will continue to be open until February of 2027 when we have our final eclipse in Virgo, February 20th of 2027. So there's always this several year time period that we have of eclipses happening where there is this energizing of the qualities of the signs and the houses where eclipses are happening. They always happen in this polarity of the signs. In this case, it is Virgo and Pisces. And so we're about midway through. We're still sort of at the beginning. We're getting towards the midway of this particular eclipse cycle. And so what has been happening for you? What's been alive for you? What's been changing and changing particularly where there are old things falling away for you at an inner psychological level, at an external material level? Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, what's been getting stirred up, particularly what was happening in September of last year, September 2024. We also had a stirring up that happened in March of 2025 when we had our most recent set of eclipses. Okay, so those are some of the things that I wanted to say about this eclipse. There's other astrology that's happening that's connecting in here. So let us talk about that. Now, Venus will move into Virgo this week. So Venus moves into Virgo on Friday, September 19th at 5:39 a.m. Pacific time. So for most of us, it's going to be Friday. Depending on where you are in the world, it may go into Saturday. And Venus is the planet of relationships, love, beauty, aesthetics, sexuality, sensuality, the things that we're drawn to, and also our sense of value, what we value in general, how we value ourselves, how we value other people and scenarios. And so with Venus moving into Virgo, there is this shift in emphasis around how we connect with others and a refocusing of what we feel is important at any point in time. So this is Venus shifting from Leo, which is about self-expression, giving and receiving love, giving and receiving affection, shifting into Virgo, which is about all of these themes that we've been talking about so far. Uh, Venus and Virgo, I find there is, what do I want to say here actually? Because as I'm feeling into this particular Venusian transit at this point in time, Venus and Virgo feels like discernment. It feels like discernment in your relationships, in how you spend your time and energy and resources. And this Venus in Virgo is distinct in that it is Venus making a square aspect to Uranus in Gemini. And Venus square Uranus is invigorating, it's exciting, it's innovating, it's highly creative. There's some tension here, though, with Venus making a square to Uranus. And so oftentimes when we have an aspect like this, it can tell about a time where we are really wanting to change things up, to experience something new, to be more creative, to find a unique way of giving and receiving love, of connecting, of creating, of being connected to our own erotic sense of being as a human. Venus Uranus in general really wants to be unhindered, unburdened. And so that might be something that comes up for you this week. I really like this combination of this Venus aspect happening during this week, along with Venus being in the same sign as the eclipse. It feels invigorating. Uh, it feels, it makes me wonder if there are things that you are just going to be ready to set down, if there are things that you're going to be ready to try that maybe you've been wanting to experiment with for some time, and now is the time. Could also be more internal as well. There could be this feeling of setting down ways of being or thoughts about the way that you need to be, that maybe some of those things are social constructs, concepts that you do not want to actively participate in anymore. Things like this. Okay, also this week, Mercury is changing signs. And so Mercury is moving from Virgo into Libra on Thursday, September 18th at 3:06 a.m. Pacific time. So Thursday, Friday, depending on where you are. So Mercury is getting a head start on this shift into Libra before the sun is, because next week the sun is going to move into Libra. We'll move into Libra season, but Mercury is leading the way. This also, so actually, okay, let me pause for a second here. So Mercury moving into Libra, this is Mercury moving into a sign that is highly relational, that is about finding a sense of balance and equanimity. It's about finding ways of communicating and transmitting that considers other people. It's also our thinking more about relationships and interpersonal dynamics and our values. And so it's very interesting because the astrology of this week, there's so much that's right here in this section that's holding very close to Virgo, that is just barely tipping over into Libra with Mercury in Libra. But Libra is ruled by Venus, so then we go back into Virgo as well. And so, another component of this shift with Mercury moving into Libra is that it's making a grand trine. Grand trine is when there's three planets involved in a trine and they make this triangle shape that we could draw in the chart. And so in this case, it's Mercury trining Uranus in Gemini and Pluto in Aquarius. And this also to me feels like the Venus Uranus. It feels expansive, it feels mind opening. It it makes me wonder if there is simply a capacity for being open to thinking about things in a different way, about taking in information in a different way, making different meanings of your experiences. Uranus is about finding change and restructuring things, shedding expired conventions, shedding things that just don't work anymore. Also connecting with excitement and novelty and innovation. And Pluto is about healing. Pluto is about encountering and seeking out the hidden and the mysterious and the unknown in order to get a deeper sense of meaning and authenticity. And so this is a trine. Trines tend to be this easy, flowing, harmonious energy. It's usually experienced as more subtle. So we're just swimming around in the trine. It's not really requiring anything of us. So we can think of it as an asset, a support system. So there's a support here around restructuring the way that you think or communicate um, this particular week. Okay. Last part that I want to share with you here is that Mars in Libra is going to be opposite Chiron in Aries. And we talked about this a little bit last week because it was starting to get into its orb of influence. And Mars is about anger, frustration, our physicality, our advocacy, how we fight for things, how we're called into a situation to defend or fight or advocate for someone or something. And Chiron is the healing function. Chiron is a symbol of things that need our attention and care because there's something there that is tender or vulnerable or just a little bit difficult. And so when we have Mars opposite Chiron, I really think of this as Mars being like a surgeon's knife or like a tool that's coming in to possibly extract something. And so there might be some psychological extraction that's happening this particular week. There might be something that is being healed, particularly around how you encounter or relate to anger, frustration, being direct, saying no, navigating boundaries. Uh, Mars also has to do with competition and how we play with others or not in that way when there is an element of competitiveness to it. And so yeah, there's something that's getting kicked up here. And whenever we have a Mars transit coming in, Mars is coming in to often bring a greater connection to our anger and frustration and our no, so that we can feel more fortified within that place in ourselves. And so certainly anger, frustration is something that may come up. And I want you to be thinking about, if that does come up, I want you to be thinking about what is underneath the anger, what is underneath the anger, agitation, frustration. Where is it coming from? What is it communicating to you? It is not often, it's not something that just sort of happens out of nowhere for no reason. There's usually something that the anger is communicating to us. And there's something that, yeah, maybe wants to be experienced or voiced or moved through. Maybe there's something um, that needs to be revised or simply tended to. Sometimes it's a matter of simply having the emotion come up and the experience come up. Now, another component of this is that Venus in Venus before it moves into Virgo, Venus in Leo is going to be making a sextile aspect to Mars and a trine to Chiron. And so I find this very interesting because Venus is coming in to offer a bit of support and ease and grace. And Venus also emphasizes the relational component of this. The it could be relational, it could be the aesthetic or the beauty. Also what I was thinking of when I was looking at this is I've been thinking more about how the planets relate to our nervous system, and particularly how Mars is connected to possibly the experience of going into the fight, flight, freeze mode, and how we respond when we feel as though there is a threat. And so this is something that may come up as well for you. This is another possibility this week. So um, and when I say a threat, that could be a, of course, more life-threatening physical threat, and also our nervous system responds to literal threat as well as perceived threat. And sometimes that is feelings that are connected to feeling overwhelmed or feeling pressure or feeling um, even the pressure of how to navigate a particular social scenario. So there might be something here this week about working with how you move through a challenging experience where your nervous system gets activated, where you feel yourself going into that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode. And maybe there is something here that is ready to be healed or changed in some way. And I really like the way that Venus is coming in also to, again, offer a bit of resources, healing support, and that relational focus. Um, when we talk about nervous system regulation, we're really talking about relationships as well, because we are always responding to other people in the room in front of us. And so when we are around a person who is regulated, that actually helps us to regulate. And when we're around a lot of people that are highly dysregulated, that has an impact on us as well. And so, of course, there are things that we can do to work with our own nervous system. And also, it's a highly relational process because we're constantly attuning and connecting into the people that we are around. So, again, this is just things that may come up here around how, yeah, how you move through the world and how you connect with your ability to protect your own energy. Okay, so those are the things this week as far as the astrology, and we're going to pull some tarot. And I want to offer you some reflections. So, one major reflection is what was happening for you in September last year, 2024? What was really on your mind? What were you thinking about? What were you feeling excited about, nervous about? Was there something that felt really important to you at that time? Was there a pickup in your energy where you felt motivated to do, explore, think about? Was there something that was just really heightened and present for you in September? And whatever that scenario was, what are some of the archetypal themes? What are some of the core themes that were happening there? And how does that relate to the now? How does that connect back in? How are you beginning fresh in some way from that time period in particular? Another contemplation is how are you feeling about your Mars function? So, how are you feeling about being angry? How are you feeling about saying no? Uh, how are you feeling about unabashedly claiming your feelings and where you stand about something? This is all very Mars Chiron things. And then lastly, I would love for you to sit with any wishes, hopes, intentions that you have for this next month, for this year. What is really important to you? And if you could ask for support around something, what would you ask for? There's such power in naming how you would like help, how you would like support at this point in time. Okay. So I'm going to shuffle the cards. And if you're not already, I invite you to get into a place that feels comfortable, relaxing for you. You may wish to close your eyes. You may wish to keep your eyes open and gaze at something in front of you that feels soothing. And as you're here, imagine that you have tree roots growing from the base of your body down into the ground, through the earth, through all of the different layers of soil and rock and earth layers, all the way down to the very center of the earth. And your tree roots connect in with this beautiful golden light at the very center of the earth. And this golden light rushes up through your roots and then moves up through your whole body in this beautiful stream of energy and light that flows up and out the top of the head and around you, creating this beautiful sphere of light of protection. In this place, you may wish to invite in the presence of your spiritual guidance team, your ancestors, benevolent ancestors, whoever or whatever is that protective, benevolent, guiding force for you. Ask that they are here with you now to help you, to protect you, and to communicate with you in a way that you can easily understand right now. If you like, you may wish to pick a number between 1 and 3, and that card will be emphasized for you in particular. Okay. Okay, so this deck is called the Tarot of the Holy Light um, by Christina Payne Towler and Michael Dowers. The imagery is quite unique, and it's based on, uh, if I'm remembering right, 17th century mystical texts. So it's sort of like very alchemical looking to my eye. I quite enjoy it. And also it's a little bit like wild sometimes if you're not prepared for it. So that's why I'm preparing you. So first card is the Seven of Discs, also known as the Seven of Pentacles. And in this deck, there is this beautiful tree at the center, and there's 7 different styles of multicolored discs that are around the tree. And at the top, there is in particular a disc with an eye at the center. And this card in this deck is associated with uh, 11 degrees to 20 degrees of Virgo, and it's ruled by the planet Saturn. So the Seven of Pentacles is often about assessing our progress and taking a minute to, or more than a minute, to uh, reflect on how far we've come, where we are now, and decide on how we want to move forward. I find the Seven of Pentacles to be a card of pause, a card of reflection, and a card that sometimes, so I think it really depends on the scenario and the question that you're asking about, because it can be a card that is reminding you to look at how much you've accomplished. And also, it can be a card that is saying, hey, why don't you like slow down and look at what's happening before you keep charging forward? Look at, um, not that you're going in the wrong direction. That's not the energy of it. About, it's more about where you're at now. There's more information to be gained, and um, that the future path may be more fully refined by reflecting on where you're at now or how far you've come in the past. That's sort of the energy. And in this card in particular, I'm just really struck by all of the different circular forms, and they're so diverse, they're so different, they're different colors, they're different structures, and I'm also struck by the image of it almost looks like fruit or seeds are falling from the tree down onto the ground. So, if I'm to take this oracularly for you in this moment, it to me feels as though there's a lot that you have done. There's maybe a lot that you've been through, and there's a multiplicity of things to review here. So there's a lot to reflect on. There's a lot to appreciate, and it is very interesting actually that we got a card ruled by Virgo. I'm just realizing with the eclipse happening in Virgo. So yeah, we're going to look at the other cards and that'll help me refine this, but there's something here about assessing where you're at and how far you've come and all of the progress that you've made. And maybe this card is coming up because it doesn't quite feel that way. And maybe there is more progress that you've made than you have realized. Okay. The second card here is the Star, also ruled by Mercury, so very interesting. So in this deck, it's an image of a person sitting on the edge of a body of water. Could be a stream, could be a bay or an ocean. And this person has two different water jugs, and they're holding one jug and pouring it out into the stream, and then the other jug is on their lap, and that is also pouring water out onto the stream. One of the themes with the star in Tarot is this continuous flow of water, this renewal, healing, hope, refreshing, return of inspiration. And in this deck, there is also, it may be difficult to see in the video, but right here, there is this, the Asclepius symbol, where there's a staff with two intertwining snakes that are running up, which is one of the symbols of healing. And there's also a white bird, I think that's a heron bird, up by the cliffs. And then there are also 7 small suns with one large sun in the center. And I did pull this card reversed. And so I am wondering for you, there's something here around renewal, rejuvenation, healing, a returning of your energy in some way, a returning of not even just your physical energy, but your vitality, your inner spark. There's something here around connecting in with what is sustainable, what is life-giving, and yeah, there's some healing to be had here, and possibly there's some healing through doing assessment and reflection. And so maybe that's a part of what's happening here is maybe there is something about the way that you're moving through the world or the way that you're conceptualizing life that is has been draining in some way. And so maybe there's something here that's being reconfigured. I'm also in this moment considering how maybe the reversed star card is about giving out your energy to other people, scenarios, etc. And maybe there is a need to redirect so that you are um, offering your very precious energy in ways that are mutually beneficial. So it's not just an outpouring that doesn't return to you. Okay, so let's think on that. The last card is the Knight of Swords. And so in this image, it has a person who looks like very bold, like a typical knight. And they're sort of standing on a ledge. They have a sword and this red piece of fabric that's covering them. And then they have some sort of uh, bird, like a raven or a crow, that's perched on their arm. And this card in this deck is ruled by Gemini. So we have a strong mercurial sort of theme with all of these cards. And the Knight of Swords is about moving forward, taking action. It's about enthusiasm, particularly enthusiasm for communicating, sharing ideas around your ideas and your thought process. So there's something here around boldly pursuing, boldly exploring your voice or communicating with other people or exploring different ideas, being open to new things. And so, actually, I find this quite interesting because when I'm looking at these all together, the first card, the Seven of Discs, Seven of Pentacles, there's so much here. Like this card to me just feels really dense. It's filled to the brim with pentacles, with flowers, with leaves. Like there's barely any open space here. There's a lot that's very full. And then we have the Star card, which is this symbol of cleansing and healing and repair. The star is really about a reparative experience, um, a, an experience of repair within one's own self. And then we have the Knight of Swords, which is about this enlivening of the mind, the mental capacity, enlivening of communication. And so it makes me wonder if a part of what's happening here is that there's a lot on your mind, maybe. There's a lot that maybe needs to be processed, like emotionally processed, mentally, physically, psychically processed. There's a lot of material here, and there is space possibly for, or an opportunity, a calling to contemplate and to find a reconnection back into yourself. I'm also with the Star card in this moment thinking about the uh, the folk tale, the stories of the seal skin, and these Clarissa Pinkola Estes in her book Women Who Run with the Wolves talks about the seal women who they like to dance out on the rocks and they leave their seal skins down on the rocks while they dance, and then one of them had their seal skins stolen, and through a variety of different events, and the woman was able to exist without her seal skin, but she started after years to get dry and withered, and just she was essentially withering away, and she needed to get back to, she needed her seal skin back to be able to go back into the water. And Clarissa Pinkola Estes in her book talks about how this story is a metaphor for returning to the self with the capital S, and returning back into this these moments where We can simply exist in our own company and our own energy, where there is nothing that is being asked of us. There's nothing that is drying us out, so to speak. And so I am sharing that with you because I'm feeling that energy in this card of the star. There's something here about returning into your own energy, your own essence, and that there is a healing capacity within that. And that it's very interesting because um, this to me is really about being with yourself. Again, may involve other people, but there's something here rejuvenating about swimming in your own energy. And then that process of returning to self is enlivening. There's a sense of vibrancy and excitement that can come from that process. There's this um, return of the youthful spirit, which is the Knight. Okay, so that is your astrology for this week. I am wishing you a most safe and easeful and enjoyable eclipse process, and such an honor to share the astrology with you. Wishing you well, and I'll see you next week. Bye.